The unexpected reunion. I hadn't seen him in years. 5, maybe 6. But the moment I saw his name on my phone, all those feelings I thought I had buried rushed back. My hand shook as I hovered over the answer button. Could it really be him after all this time? It all started back in college, in the chaos of young love. We were inseparable for 2 years. But life had its own plans, and he left for a job in another city, leaving me behind with a broken heart and shattered dreams. I moved on, or at least I thought I had. But every now and then, his memory would sneak up on me. Sometimes it was a song we used to listen to or an old photo I couldn't bring myself to delete. Now, here he was again. I answered the call. His voice was warm, familiar. "Hey, it's been a while," he said, his tone soft, almost cautious. "I'm in town for a few days, and I'd really like to see you." I didn't know what to say. My heart raced, and I felt like that college girl all over again. Part of me wanted to hang up and never look back, but another part of me, a deeper, more curious part, wanted to know why he was reaching out after all these years. "Okay," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. "Tonight?" he asked. I hesitated for a moment, then gave him the address to a little cafe downtown. A place that was neutral, where I felt safe. The place where I had sat so many times wondering what could have been if we had stayed together. I couldn't believe this was happening. When I arrived at the cafe, my hands were still shaking. I had no idea what to expect. Would he look different? Would the years have changed him? More importantly, would I feel different when I saw him again? The moment he walked in, all those thoughts vanished. He looked almost the same as I remembered, taller, stronger maybe, but still him. Our eyes met, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I wasn't sure if it was out of excitement or fear, but something told me this meeting would change everything. He smiled and walked over, pulling me into a gentle hug. "It's good to see you," he said quietly. His arms felt so familiar around me, like time hadn't passed at all. We sat down, ordered coffee, and made small talk about life, work, everything we had missed out on. But underneath the surface, there was this tension, this undeniable pull between us. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me, as if he was trying to read my mind. And maybe I was doing the same to him. Then, out of nowhere, he reached across the table and took my hand. The warmth of his touch sent shivers down my spine. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't wonder if I made the biggest mistake of my life by leaving you." My heart pounded in my chest. This was too much. "Why now?" I asked, pulling my hand away, trying to keep control of my emotions. "Why are you telling me this after all these years?" He looked down at the table, as if searching for the right words. "Because I'm here now," he said softly. "And I want to make things right." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to yell at him, tell him he had no right to come back into my life and stir up old feelings. But another part of me, the part that had missed him for so long, wanted to lean in, to hear more, to let him explain. "I'm not the same person I was back then," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You can't just show up and expect things to go back to the way they were." "I don't," he said quickly. "I just want a chance to show you that I'm different now. That we could be different." My mind was racing. Could I trust him? Could I let myself open up to him again after everything? But as I looked into his eyes, I realized something important. I had never really stopped caring about him. We spent hours at that cafe, talking about everything and nothing. The sun had long set by the time we decided to leave, but instead of saying goodbye, we walked together, lost in conversation. The air was cool, and the streets were quiet. I felt comfortable with him, more comfortable than I had felt with anyone else in years. At some point, we found ourselves standing in front of my apartment building. It was late, and part of me knew I should say goodnight. But as I looked at him, standing there in the moonlight, I couldn't bring myself to let him go. "Do you want to come up?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. We walked up the stairs in silence, the tension between us growing with every step. When we reached my door, I fumbled with my keys, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel his presence behind me, so close I could almost feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. The door clicked open, and we stepped inside. My apartment felt smaller with him there, the air thick with anticipation. He stood close, his eyes never leaving mine, and I could feel the electricity between us. I don't know if this is a good idea, I whispered, though every part of me wanted to close the distance between us. He stepped closer, his hand gently brushing my arm. I think it's the best idea, he said softly. As he stepped closer, I could feel my breath catch. His fingers traced a line from my wrist up to my shoulder, sending shivers down my spine. I wanted to step away, to keep some distance between us, but something inside me made me stay rooted to the spot. The tension between us was undeniable, and it was becoming harder and harder to resist. I've thought about this moment so many times, he whispered, his voice soft but full of emotion. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. And what do you think happens next? His eyes locked onto mine, and for a brief second, time seemed to stand still. Then, in one swift motion, he closed the space between us, his lips brushing against mine. It was a soft kiss at first, hesitant, as though he was afraid I'd pull away. But when I didn't, he deepened it, his hands gently resting on my hips. It was everything I remembered, and more. His touch, his scent, the way he kissed me like he knew exactly how to make me melt. For a moment, I let myself get lost in him, in the feeling of being wanted, of being cared for. It was like stepping back into a familiar dream, one I never wanted to end. But as the kiss grew more intense, reality crept back in. I gently pulled away, catching my breath, trying to clear my head. We shouldn't rush into this, I said, my voice trembling slightly. He nodded, his expression soft but understanding. I'm sorry, I've missed you so much. I missed you too, I admitted. But this is a lot to take in. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, and I don't want to pressure you. I couldn't let you slip away again without trying. We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to invite him to stay the night, to see where things might go. But another part of me, the more cautious part, knew that this was a crossroads. If we rushed things now, we might ruin any chance of rebuilding what we had lost. Maybe we should take things slow, I said finally, breaking the silence. We have time. He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile that made my heart flutter. You're right, he said softly. I don't want to mess this up. We talked a little more, the intensity between us fading into something softer, more comfortable. He left a little while later, leaving me standing in the doorway, my heart full of emotions I hadn't felt in years. As I closed the door behind him, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of something new, or the rekindling of something I thought I had lost forever. The next few days passed in a blur. We texted constantly, little messages that made me smile, made my heart race. He was back in my life in a way I never expected, and it felt good. But with every new conversation, every flirty exchange, I found myself questioning what I wanted. Could I really trust him again? Could I let myself fall for him after all the heartache? One evening, as I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, staring at my phone, I got a text from him. Can I see you tonight? I hesitated. I wanted to say yes, I really wanted to say yes, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the nagging feeling that I was getting in over my head. But before I could even decide, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find him standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers, his expression a mixture of nerves and hope. I couldn't wait, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I smiled, stepping aside to let him in. As soon as the door closed behind us, he pulled me into his arms, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was both familiar and electric all at once. This time, I didn't pull away. I let myself get lost in the moment, in the feeling of being wrapped up in him again. As the night unfolded, we found ourselves tangled up in conversation, laughter, and more stolen kisses. It felt so easy, so natural, like no time had passed at all. But beneath the surface, I knew there were things we needed to address. Unspoken words that had been hanging over us for years. What happens now? I asked, my voice soft, as we sat together on the couch. He looked at me, his expression serious for the first time that night. I don't know, he admitted. But I want to be honest with you. My heart skipped a beat. Honest? About what? There's someone else, he said quietly, his eyes filled with regret. I ended things with her before I came back, but it's complicated. I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. All the joy, the excitement, the feelings of being wanted, they all came crashing down around me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to scare you off, he said, reaching for my hand. I wanted to see if we still had a chance before I told you everything. I pulled my hand away, my mind racing. Could I really be the second choice? Could I be with someone who wasn't fully mine? I need time, I said, standing up, trying to steady my shaking hands. I can't do this right now. He stood up too, his face full of regret. I understand, he whispered. I'll give you space. As he left, I stood there, staring at the door, my heart aching. Everything had changed in an instant, and I had no idea what to do next. The days that followed were some of the hardest I had faced in a long time. His confession had left me torn, part of me still longed for him, for the connection we shared, but another part of me was furious. How could he expect me to trust him after all this? Was I just going to be a rebound while he figured out what he wanted? I threw myself into work, into anything that would distract me from the thoughts spinning around in my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the lingering feelings. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from him, apologies, please for another chance. I ignored most of them, unsure of what to say. But one evening, after a particularly long day, I found myself reading one of his texts over and over. I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Please, meet me one more time. Just let me explain everything. I knew I had a choice to make. I could either continue living in the past, letting my anger and disappointment fester, or I could face him one more time and try to find closure, whatever that might look like. With a deep breath, I texted him back, let's talk. One last time, we met at the same cafe, the place where it had all started again. This time, the air felt different, heavier. When I saw him, I could tell by the look in his eyes that he was just as nervous as I was. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke. I messed up, he began, his voice low. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I need you to know that what we had, it's the only thing that's ever felt real to me. I stared at him, my emotions swirling. I don't know if I can trust you, I admitted. How can I be sure you won't hurt me again? He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. You can't. I know I've made mistakes, but I've realized something important. I've spent so much time trying to figure out my life, but nothing makes sense without you in it. My heart softened a little at his words, but I was still guarded. And what about her? The other woman? She's in my past now, he said firmly. I ended things for good. There's no going back. I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. I had come here expecting closure, expecting to walk away from him once and for all. But as I sat there, I realized something important. I still cared about him. Despite everything, despite the pain and confusion, I wasn't ready to let go. I don't know if this will work, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try. He smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. I promise, I won't let you down this time. I nodded, feeling a sense of cautious hope. We'll take it slow, I added, needing to set boundaries. No rushing into anything. Slow, he agreed, reaching for my hand. His touch felt different this time, more real, more grounded. As we sat there, hands intertwined, I felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe we could rebuild what we once had. Or maybe we would create something entirely new. Either way, I was ready to find out. The end. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story.